All right, for section 2.2, I just want to focus on one example today. We're going to sketch the graph of f of x by plotting points. In particular, I want to sketch this piecewise function f of x is equal to 2x plus 3 if x is equal or less than 1, and negative square root of x minus 1 if 1 is less than x, or in other words, x is greater than 1. To plot these points, or to sketch this graph, we want to plot points, and to do that, we want to create a table of values. So I'll do that here. We want to pick easy values to plug in. So let's start with some integer values, a little less than 1. So maybe we'll start with negative 2. We'll go to negative 1, 0, and 1. Here I'm actually going to start back over at 1, and we'll see why we do this in a minute. We're going to plug in 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So let's go ahead and fill in those values for our function. If we plug in negative 2, we're in the interval x is equal to less than 1, so we're going to plug that into 2x plus 3. So this is 2 times negative 2 plus 3. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. Continue along and plug in negative 1 here. And we're going to get positive 1. Plug in 0 and we get 3. Plugging in 1 and we get 5. Now, I've written out 1 here a second time. The reason is I want to plug that into the expression negative square root of x minus 1. We won't actually plot that point later, but we want that for determining what the graph looks like around that point. So, let's plug in 1 into negative square root of x minus 1. Well, here we get negative square root of 1 minus 1, so this is 0. Right? Square root of 0 is 0, and negative of that is still 0. Plug in 2. We get negative 1. Plugging in 3, we get negative root 2. Plugging in 4, we get negative root 3. Plugging in 5, we get negative 2. So now we want to plot this. So we want to draw our x and y axis. Notice our x values go from negative 2 to positive 5. I'll go ahead and draw negative 3 along the x-axis and go out to positive 5. Y values range from negative 2 all the way up to positive 5. So, again, maybe I'll go down 3, but then up 5. So we need to plot these points. So x is, when x is negative 2, y is negative 1, negative 2, negative 1, right? We move left 2, down 1. When x is negative 1, y is positive 1, so we go left 1, up 1. 0, 3, so that means we don't move left, right at all, and we go up 3. 1, 5, we move right 1, up 5. And here I want to stop, connect these points. This forms a straight line that will go on forever off to the left and down. Then here, we're going to now draw the right half of this function, right? We drew in the 2x plus 3 on the interval x is equal to less than 1. Now we're going to draw in the expression negative square root of x minus 1 for 1 less than x, or in other words, when x is greater than 1. To do this, I actually want to know what happens when x equals 1, which is why we plugged in 1 into that function earlier. Except that's not actually in our graph. So when I go to plot 1, 0, I'm actually going to do it with an open circle to represent the fact that that point's not actually in our graph. But everything just to the right of that will be in our graph. So I want to go ahead and make that point to give us that representation in the graph. Okay, then we need to plug in the rest of these values. 2, -1, so go right 2, down 1. 3, -2, negative root 2, excuse me again. So 3, negative root 2. Negative root 2 is roughly negative 1.4. So I'll plot that point. 4, negative root 3. Negative root 3 is roughly negative 1.7. And then 5, -2. And here we sketch the graph as well. And if you recognize the square root function, this is a square root function that is moved over to the right and then flipped downward. But this is our graph of f of x, where it was f of x was the piecewise function 2x plus 3 if x is equal to less than 1, and negative root x minus 1 if 1 is less than x.